Welcome to this YouTube channel. In this video we are going to talk about top 10 worst states to live in America. So before starting this video, like this video, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for future updates. We've all been reminded of the importance of home after more than a year in quarantine. Even as the pandemic fades, some businesses are reconsidering their policy about remote employment. That is why states are emphasizing their quality of life in their business presentations. In addition, companies looking for workers during a labor shortage want to locate in a state where workers wish to live. Some states are at a disadvantage as a result of the increased competition over quality of life. They are simply not good places to live, based on the numbers. The definition is also evolving. We now understand the significance of public health systems and hospital capacity. All citizens are valued in inclusive states, and they are protected from discrimination. And Business America has spoken out against restrictive voting rules both loudly and discreetly behind the scenes. You could disagree if you live in one of these 10 states. However, these are the worst areas to live in America, according to the data. Number 10, Indiana. According to the United Health Foundation, Indiana ranks 48th in public health financing per capita, paying only $55 per person in 2020. That hasn't helped in the fight against the pandemic. According to data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, while hospitals were usually competent, Indiana's COVID-19 vaccination rates have lagged. Discrimination based on age, sexual orientation, or gender identity is not covered by the state's public accommodations statute. The state changed its already tight voting rules in April to impose further restrictions on mail voting. Number 9, Louisiana. Louisiana is the least healthy state in the US, with high rates of obesity, smoking, and premature death, exacerbated by the country's highest poverty rate of 19%. In addition, the state has one of the worst crime rates in the country, and one of the lowest COVID-19 vaccination rates. Louisiana is one of only a few states that requires an excuse to vote absentee, according to the Center for Election Innovation and Research. According to the National Conference of State Legislatures, the state only offers 7 days of early voting. Number 8, Arkansas. Voting in Arkansas had previously shown to be a challenge. The state made it even more difficult this year with legislation, dubbed the most damaging assault on the right to vote since the Jim Crow period by the Arkansas ACLU. It imposes new limitations on mail and absentee voting, as well as tougher identification requirements and prohibitions on providing food or water to voters in line. Arkansas also has a high crime rate and a poor immunization rate for COVID-19. Number 7, Alabama. After Mississippi, Alabama has the nation's second lowest COVID-19 immunization rate. As a result, there are fears that the state could become a conduit for more contagious viral varieties. In addition to COVID, the Yellowhammer State has one of the highest rates of premature death, the second highest rate of cardiovascular disease, and the third highest rate of diabetes in the country. Alabama is one of just 5 states with no legal rights against discrimination for non-disabled persons, according to the National Conference of State Legislatures. Number 6, Georgia. Georgia's new voting limitations set the tone for similar legislation across the country, as well as the business backlash that followed, with Major League Baseball removing this year's All-Star Game from Atlanta. According to academics at Northern Illinois University, the state ranks 49th in a voting difficulty rating. The new law's supporters point out that Georgia allows no excuse absentee voting, although President Joe Biden's home state of Delaware does not. However, despite no evidence of election fraud in 2020, the extensive crackdown on alleged election fraud has drew strong criticism from the business community. Georgia likewise lacks statewide anti-discrimination protections. Number 5, Tennessee. In 2021, Tennessee lawmakers took a flurry of proposals aimed targeting the state's transgender community, including a ban on transgender girls engaging in girls' sports, limitations on the use of public toilets and school locker rooms, and a ban on gender-affirming care for minors. Residents of Tennessee also have poor health, a low rate of COVID-19 vaccines, and a high rate of criminality. Number 4, Missouri. Missouri is one of only 6 states that does not allow universal early voting, according to the Center for Election Innovation and Research. In addition, the state has one of the highest crime rates in the country, with burglary and aggravated assault among the most common crimes, according to the most recent FBI crime figures. Number 3, Nevada. Nevada is the state that spends the least on its inhabitants' health, with only $50 spent per person on public health. In terms of primary care doctors per person, the state is dead bottom. The desert has poor air quality and a high crime rate. However, unlike many of the states on this list, Nevada is extending voting rights, with Governor Steve Sisolak signing legislation in June to increase mail-in voting, expedite registration, and replace the state's shambolic caucus system with presidential primaries. Score for life, health, and inclusion in 2021 to 112 out of 375 top states receives an F. Voting rights and inclusion are two of the country's greatest assets. Funding for public health, hospital resources, and air quality are all weaknesses. Number 2, Texas. Texas constantly attempting to outdo itself when it comes to laws and regulations that are perceived as exclusive, despite its strength as a place to do business. It is one of the few states that does not have a legislation protecting against discrimination in public accommodations. Texas Democrats defeated a bill that would have further restricted voting in a state that is already one of the most difficult to vote in by some criteria. Though Governor Greg Abbott and legislators are pushing ahead in a new special session to enact the legislation, the Lone Star State is likely to finish at the bottom of this list. While the Texas Senate had already voted in favor of the bill Democratic, lawmakers fled the state to drag down the process and draw national attention. Number 1, Arizona. The Grand Canyon state is rich in natural beauty, but it's also rich in ozone, especially in densely populated Maricopa County, which is home to Phoenix and has some of the worst air quality in the country, according to the American Lung Association. Arizona is frugal with public health financing, and suffers from a physician and mental health professional deficit. Despite the fact that there is no evidence of election fraud in Arizona and despite efforts to find it, state lawmakers imposed new postal voting restrictions this year. Score for life, health, and inclusion in 2021 to 91 out of 375 top states receives an F. Arizona's strength is that it scored poorly across the board. Air quality, public health financing, crime, and inclusiveness are all flaws. What do you think about this video? Which of the following top 10 worst states to live in America you find most shocking? Do let us know down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear from us again, be sure to hit that subscribe button before you go.